have you with us on another Wednesday edition of the Braves Clubhouse Report, right here on your home of the Braves, the Fan 680 and 93.7 FM, alongside Wiley Ballard. Kevin McAlpin here with you till the bottom of the hour, getting you up to speed on all things Atlanta Braves, who go for a sweep of the visiting Reds coming up tonight. We'll give you the pitching matchups and what time you can find our coverage coming up a little bit later on in our show. Last night, it was a 7-6 win over Cincinnati in a game that saw Kyle Wright make his season debut. He only lasts 3 innings as command really escaped him in that third inning, Wiley. And, unfortunately, that's not how Kyle was looking to break back in here this season. The Reds send 10 to the plate in the inning. They score 4 times, a couple of walks, one with the bases loaded, a hit batter with the bases loaded. So you could tell mechanics-wise, and like Nick and Chris said, maybe that pitch clock just taking a little getting used to for a guy who was slow this spring.
Yeah, you hit on it first. The 3 walks, the hit by pitch in the third inning. But even before all of that, you give up back-to-back hits in the first 2 pitches. And, with the pitch clock, all of a sudden things can speed up a little bit. I know you were talking with Chelina and Domino in the last segment. Concern level not overly high. I was going to say a 4 before I saw you guys go into the 10th and 100th place in the decimal points. But that's kind of where I'm at as well. I think for a guy who, again, didn't get that spring training, we saw how it impacted Charlie Morton some last year when he felt like he wasn't quite on schedule when he came in preparing for the season coming off that leg injury. For Kyle Wright, not getting to experience the new rules, the new pitch clock, I think, again, I'm kind of in a point where give him a couple more turns through the rotation. There are some guys who, even when things are perfectly normal throughout spring training, that you'd still say give them 3 or 4 times through the rotation before they are fully locked in. But the nice thing is, when you have an offense like the Braves, you don't need to have, 5-6 innings of scoreless baseball to have a chance to win on a given night. And last night, Matt Olson with the big swing, Ozzie Albies a big home run, number 100. So, I think on most nights, Kyle Wright's going to be better than that. And because the Braves' offense is so good, you're still able to find a way to win.
118.6 miles per hour off the bat was Matt Olson's solo homer in the bottom of the first. It's the hardest hit ball in the StatCast era by anybody that has worn a Braves uniform. And if I would have given anybody out there, you're a casual Brave fan, tell me who you think that surpassed. How many guesses would it take to get to Tyler Flowers, who previously held the record for the hardest hit baseball? Because you think about 2015, Braves have had some mashers in this lineup over the last 7-8 years.
Oh, Ronald Acuna Jr. would have been at the top of the list. Freddie Freeman, obviously, his hit plenty of home runs in his day. I'm trying to think of other guys.
Donaldson, Riley.
Even Marcell Ozuna there in 2020. I think there's a lot of other options. So, shout out to Flo for having that record stand as long as it did. But the thing for me on Ozzie's, what I loved about his was it was on the first pitch. Mm-hmm. And that's where he has done so much damage over his career. I went back and looked at his 2021 season as an all-star. He hit over 400 on the first pitch, slugged over 700. Last year, those numbers dipped a little bit. It was below 300 batting average, still slugging over 500. But for Ozzie, the biggest thing that has jumped out since that 2021 season, he's chasing a lot more. And because he has such good bat-to-ball ability, normally when he chases pitches outside of the zone, it could just result in a weak fly ball, or more like if it's beneath the knees, a weak ground ball. But good to see him square one up on the first pitch, even if it was technically a little bit below the zone. But no, good to see Ozzie getting it going. And if he's a guy who I think is a little more aggressive on the first pitch, that's the other thing that jumped out to me. He's swinging at less than 30% of first pitches, which is way below his career norm. Now, we've played a dozen games. I'm not trying to sit here and draw big conclusions, but that did at least, get my eyebrows perked up and said, okay, that's interesting. Maybe that's a change he's trying to make.
Well, and you look at this lineup, there's a lot of guys that like to go hunting early in the count. See Ronald Acuna Jr., yes. Matt Olson, Austin Riley. Those guys, they see a fatty early on, and they're going for it, right? And I think what you've seen is whether it's Albies over the course of his career, he's a guy that likes to be aggressive early in the count. Marcell as well. There's just so many guys that they're looking first pitch because, as we've heard, think about Chipper Jones.
Yes.
He's talked about it over the course of his career and since he retired. A lot of times, the best pitch you're going to see is the very first one you're going to get in at-bat.
And I think that's one of the reasons the Braves have been so successful offensively over the last several years. Now, obviously, tons of talent mixed in there as well. You got to be a good hitter to take advantage of those first pitch strikes. But, Freddie Freeman was always about the first pitch. You mentioned Chipper Jones. And I think for this offense, this has always been an offense in my mind, especially with Acuna at the top, that they want to be on the attack. This is not a they're going to try and draw you into trouble, apply pressure by running the football. They're going to take deep shots, if we're going to go to a football analogy here in Atlanta, which, seems to always be accepted. I think Atlanta's at its best when it's going after the first pitch, and Ozzie Albies did that last night, and I think we could see him do a little more of that as the season unfolds.
Like you mentioned, he joins the Century Club, his 100th career home run last night, second of the season, tied the game at 4, and then you get, once again, contributions from 7, 8, and 9 in your lineup, really 7 and 9, couple of more ribbies from Arcia, and then Sam Hilliard, back-to-back doubles in the 3rd and the 4th. He was on base 3 times last night, so we've talked about it the last 2 or 3 years. It seems like there's no holes in this lineup, and when you're getting the 7th, 8th, 9th spot in your lineup to have that kind of production to roll things back to the top, that's when you know things are going pretty well.
Well, and especially on a night and over a stretch where Michael Harris II isn't available. Sam Hilliard, along with Kevin Pillar, getting a chance to contribute here. And, you mentioned exit velocity. I mean, how about Sam Hilliard? I mean, he's another guy who can really crush a baseball. He's already hit one. Am I looking at the right? Yeah, he's already cleared 100 miles per hour a couple times this year. His max exit velocity is in the 98th percentile of all major league hitters this season. So he's another guy, 6'5", 236 pounds, and that's something Atlanta has really, I think, when you talk to other teams, other guys, scouts, broadcasters, anyone who follows the sport, beat writers. One of the things that jumps out about Atlanta is the pop 1 through 9. You got Sam Hilliard hitting in the 9-hole last night, a couple of doubles, and again, his question has never been the raw power. That's one of the things that makes him so attractive as a player. It's more about the contact and the hit tool, and that admittedly has still been a struggle for him at times as recently as this year. But again, the Braves, the one thing they're always going to do is when they get to the field, they're going to feel like we got more power than you do.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen that on display. And one guy who's really seen that on display is Brian Snitker. We're going to hear from Snit coming up here momentarily, get his thoughts on not only what he saw from Kyle Wright and a big night from Michael Tonkin. We'll talk about him coming up later on in our show. We'll hear from Michael in our next segment as well. But to your point, Wiley, Snit basically echoed those sentiments last night where he said, he really expects this offense to put up some big-time numbers here in 2023.
No, I think we're a very good offense. I expect to score runs, and like I say, Ozuna hit some balls really good today. So it was I think more indicative of what we're capable of.
And we've seen that over the last few years where it's not just one or two guys, right? You're getting it. One night it might be Acuna with 3 or 4 hits. It might be Sean Murphy with the walk-off. It might be Austin Riley coming through with some big spots. Olson off to a great start. But what you're seeing is this lineup can do damage really anywhere 1 through 9.
And I thought Snit made a good point on Ozuna. I mean, look, you look at his numbers right now, and, you're sitting there saying, should somebody else be in the lineup? But one of the reasons he is still getting these opportunities is not only because of what he's done, going back to the 2020 season and at times, for other stretches over his Braves career, but when you hit the ball that hard and you've had success at the major league level, it's hard to not want to keep seeing, okay, if this clicks, it's going to be great. Mm-hmm. And I think the Braves' philosophy is we want to hit for power. And look, like Snit said, this is an offense that, they're scoring runs right now, even when Marcell isn't at his best. And so for me, I think that's one of the reasons they keep giving him opportunities is because, he's got a chance to impact the baseball, and I'm looking at some of his numbers so far in the season. His whiff rate, is still pretty high, but the barrel rate over 84% and hard hit rate, above average as well. And I don't want to get too number savvy there, or numbers intense. But for Ozuna, people ask me, why is he still in the lineup? I'm saying the answer is because they think if he figures it out, he can be maybe not an all-star level player, but a significant contributor to what is already a really good offense.
Well, and your other thing is, too, right now, with d'Arnaud and Harris being out,
yes,
you need him in the lineup, really, and you got to find a way to try to hit your way through this. And like you said, that line out to center field, one of the hardest hit balls we've seen lately. So hopefully, maybe, fingers crossed, that's a sign of things to come for Marcell moving forward. Well, speaking of hard hit balls, Matt Olson, how about 118.6 miles per hour off the bat at the solo homer in the bottom of the first? And here was Snit after the game talking about Olson's strong start to the year.
Since day one of spring training, first game we played, he's just kind of carrying on a really strong spring into the season. And I said all the changes or whatever he did in the off season, the hard work he put in, it's kind of paying off for him because it's been really good so far. This whole game.
8 home runs in spring training. Yeah, I'll say he's just he's seeing it really well right now. And I don't put a ton of stock into spring training numbers, but I'd rather have a guy hit 8 home runs than hit 075 during spring.
Completely agreed on both accounts. And look, for Matt, you were talking about it with Domino on the pregame daily today. It kind of feels like a year removed from getting introduced to the organization, moving back home. Replacing Freddie Freeman, that's a lot to handle for anybody, even a Major League Baseball player with a track record of Matt Olson. But this year he has gotten off to a really hot start. And, the top 3 hitters in the Braves lineup right now, Acuna, Olson, and Riley, statistically, it's hard to find a better top 3, in all the National League. They've driven in more runs of any National League top 3 hitters in the National League. And again, I think that's one of the reasons this Braves offense is so feared, because they come at you from the very first pitch with Acuna, followed by Matt Olson, Austin Riley, and like you said, d'Arnaud's out, Harris is out, Murphy hadn't quite gotten it going, and I think it's tough to, over the course of a baseball season, to feel like you have all 9 guys firing on all cylinders. However, the nice thing is when you have so much talent that the Braves do in their lineup, you can afford to have a guy out with injury, or perhaps, Sean Murphy not having quite up to his standards through the first 12 games. Although, heck, if you're going to hit a homer, why not a walk-off, on Monday night? So he's still finding a way to contribute. And I thought Chris Domino made a good point, too. He's having to learn a new staff, too, at the catcher position. And it's a staff that, not necessarily the staff he thought he might have coming in with Dylan Dodd, Jared Schuster, Bryce Elder getting opportunities. And that's probably the next place we need to go, too, is how well Elder's pitched. I know he, his first 2 starts, 6+, no runs in both of them. So, I think for Murphy, it's a matter of trying to get comfortable, and hopefully he has a similar trajectory that Matt Olson did a year ago. Yeah,
he came, had a big night the other night, a couple of doubles, then the walk-off homer. Good to see him get the bat going, and there's just so much going on when you switch leagues, you switch teams, going from one with 0 postseason aspirations to a World Series or bust mentality. There's a lot going on, so I think you've seen a much more comfortable Matt Olson this year as to where he was last year, and I think you'll see Sean Murphy settle in very quickly. One more from Snit, as last night we did see Kyle Wright make his season debut. Went just 3 innings, gave up 4 runs, 4 hits, walked 4, and struck out 3. And here is the skipper as he assessed Wright's season debut.
That's just good to get him back in there. It's from the spring he had, and the thing is, I think he feels good, he's healthy. Just be good to get him back out there again. The next time, because he just looked like got out of whack. Through the ball's coming out really good. I think it's just good to get him out there and through a game first. And then the next, he should have something to build on there.
And Wiley, right now it's about the up and downs, right? It's about going, sitting on the bench for a little while, coming back out. He did that 6 times in his rehab start with Gwinnett. Went just 3 innings last night, but really it's about just getting back into that full repetition mode. And I think that he'll only be better his next go around in 5 days.
Well, and it's funny because as soon as the bell rings, on March 30th or March, whenever your first game is, all of a sudden you feel like you're going from 0 to 100 from spring training into regular season. And I was listening to Terry Francona talk about this, manager at the Cleveland Guardians, yesterday, just how you want to get going, you want to press, but in some ways there's still a certain amount of buildup that goes into the regular season, and that's for guys who had a normal spring training. Kyle Wright didn't have that, so you're still kind of treating it a little bit like, all right, we're gonna get you right here. And again, the offense I think can cover up from some of the shortcomings of the pitching staff. As Kyle Wright finds his rhythm, hopefully as the Braves get a little healthier in the rotation as well. Max Fried, hoping to get him back soon with the hamstring issue. So, for me, I think you're more worried about, okay, what does this stuff look like? What are you hearing from Kyle Wright after the start? Is he talking about feeling good, feeling okay? Then you are overly invested in the results of your first start of the season. And again, Braves offense picks up the slack, and the bullpen for that matter as well. I know we're going to get to that in our next segment.
Yeah, Michael Tonkin did a great job last night. We're going to tell you more about Tonkin in our next segment and let you hear from the guy who picked up his first major league win since September 29th, 2016. What a journey it has been for Michael Tonkin, and we'll hear from the veteran righty as we continue on the Braves Clubhouse Report right after this on The Fan.
The Braves Clubhouse Report on 680 The Fan.
Braves and Reds coming up tonight, series finale. Braves go for a sweep. That puts us on the air at 6:05 Eastern Right after Chuck and Chernoff here on The Fan, Ford leadoff show with Domino and I will walk you up to first pitch. Ben and Joe have the call as the Braves will hope to close out their first homestand of the season on a high note here tonight with Spencer Strider on the mound. Well, Wiley, I'm so used to saying Chris.
Yeah.
We do so many shows together. Wiley Ballard in studio with us here today. And Wiley, on a night where your starter gives you 3 innings, you just hope that the bullpen can keep you close. And you can't say enough good things about the job that Michael Tonkin did for you last night. Takes over in the 4th. He gives up a 1-out single. Then it was a 1-2-3 5th. Retired the side in order in the 6th. So he gives up just 1 hit, 3 scoreless innings, no walks, and 3 Ks. Keeps you right there, gives you a chance to win, and that's exactly what we saw as this offense had his back last night.
Yeah, and again, the bullpen, without Marcell Iglesias, I think all indications were A.J. Minter was down last night, not available. So you're going to have to dig deeper into the bullpen, and Michael Tonkin, just another guy who, spent last season in AAA, put up some pretty impressive numbers with the Stripers, but certainly wasn't the headline of the prospect list. And why would he be? I mean, this is a guy who's 33 years old. He's been out of Major League Baseball for the last 7 seasons. And to get his first win in about 6.5 years, I can't imagine how emotional it was. I mean, to be fair, I think just getting to the big leagues like he did a couple of weeks ago, making his first Major League appearance since 2017, back up in D.C. on a Sunday of opening weekend was a big deal. But he's proven to be a valuable piece for this Braves team. He's not just eating up innings, but he's giving you quality.
Really is, and that's something that stood out to Brian Snitker following last night's outing. And here was the skipper talking about Tonkin stepping up in a big way for his pen last night.
Oh, nice, man. He's pitched some really big spots for us where we needed a bridge or to cover some innings. He's done a really, really nice job so far. It was really good. He's very efficient. That was huge. We sit in there thinking, man, if he could get us through the 6th, that'd be great. And he did.
It's exactly what he did, Wiley. He was efficient. He threw a lot of strikes. And if I would have given you 2 months ago, hey, give me a guy that no one's talking about that is going to be a big part of the first 2 weeks of the season, I don't know, Michael Tonkin would have been the first 30 guesses out of anybody right now.
No shot. I mean, I'm waiting to see some Braves fans dress up as Tonka trucks for Michael Tonkin. So, I mean, again, you have to have a lot of just tough guys in the bullpen. And Chris Domino always talks about it. You got to have guys, no ego. You're not going to be the story. You're going to ask to pitch on a day you're not feeling all that great. You got to be the long man out of the bullpen. It's probably one of the most thankless jobs in all of Major League Baseball from a player standpoint. And again, we go back to September 29th, 2016. That was his last win. And, I was looking this up for fun. You know who the Braves starting pitcher was on September 29th, 2016?
I don't. I was racking my brain because you offered me money if I got it right in the break. 2016 September. What about Ryan Weber?
Josh Colementor.
Yeah, I never would have gotten Josh Colementor.
He made 3 starts for the Braves that season, and Malik Smith was hitting leadoff in that game. And
goodness.
that, for Braves fans, that kind of gives you some context of how far removed Michael Tonkin was from his last Major League win as you dig back to the 2016 final week of that season.
I know a lot of folks cringe when they hear 2015 to 2016 and the Braves attached to it. Those were some lean years, but when you look at how far, it puts in perspective, where they were to where they are. And it is amazing that just a short time later, in the grand scheme of things, here they are, year in and year out, a team that's picked to be a World Series caliber ball club. And that's a testament to the job this front office has done, building a team that can win year in and year out. And, big part of that's depth. You have to have depth as part of your organization. All right, let's hear from Michael Tonkin as he was talking to the media after last night's game. And a couple of cuts from Tonkin. We'll start with how much his time in the organization down at AAA meant to him a year ago.
After bouncing around for as long as I did, going to Gwinnett and being in one place all year, and like I've said, the organization is awesome. Being there, you could just see that this is first class, and they treat you. I mean, when I was in Gwinnett, they treat you like a big league. It's awesome.
Wiley, this is a guy that was a 30th round pick back in 2008 of the Minnesota Twins, and he spent a number of years in the Twins organization, as you heard him talk about bouncing around from playing for the Long Island Ducks in independent ball to playing in Tijuana, Mexico, to playing in the Dominican Winter League, to be playing in Japan, in the Nippon Ham Fighters. I mean, this guy has boy, he has stamped the passport, no doubt about it. And to find a home now, it's got to be a comforting feeling for him as well, knowing, okay, look, I had a good season last year. They clearly saw something in me this spring that they believe in. And he's got to feel like, okay, you know what? Maybe this can be a spot we can put down some roots, at least for a little while.
And you almost don't have words for it. And we've had a number of these stories over the last 10 or so years in this organization. We were talking about that before we came on the air. I mean, Evan Gaddis, another one. Chris Martin, of course, he was a big leaguer by the time the Braves got a hold of him, but he had a story early on in his career where he was working at UPS. It's the story of Daniel Bard has been well chronicled up in Colorado, dealing with some anxiety and being out of the game for a number of years. And it just goes to show that, and again, I think, there's a lot of guys who try and hang on for as long as they can. And I think even for the guys who don't end up resurfacing to the major leagues or getting all the way to the show, there's still a lot to be taken positive from hanging on and throwing the kitchen sink at trying to pursue a dream, whether you succeed or fail. But when you get a chance to see a guy who succeeds in getting back to the major leagues, it kind of gives you a newfound appreciation for, the human spirit and how, if you really believe in something, you can give yourself a fighting chance, which I think is what a lot of guys who've gone through what Michael Tonkin went through would tell you is, I just want a shot. I just want to make sure I give myself the best chance I can. If it doesn't happen, so be it. And sometimes it doesn't. I mean, there are a lot of guys who probably have similar stories to Michael Tonkin that don't finish it in the big leagues, or don't return to the big leagues. So it's inspiring to see him persevere for what all he's been through. And you also got to give a lot of credit to his family, because we talk about it all the time. That type of journey, it's not just one man. It's a wife, it's parents, and a lot of times it's a lot of other support, a lot of members of the support system that stick with you through that journey.
Wynton Bernard was the story I loved last year with the Colorado Rockies. 10 years in minor league baseball. He was a 35th rounder back in 2012. And I remember they had the audio of him calling his mom. He's in tears. And all he said was, "Mama, I did it. I made it." And he got up to the show. First game, got a hit, stole a base, scored a run. And I remember his post-game comments. I don't care if I never play a game again. I did it. I got there. And it's inspirational for a number of young players who may be in a similar spot where you're thinking about, do you hang it up? Do you give up on the dream? Well, here is proof positive that you can get back and contribute at the highest level. All right, one more from Tonkin, as we've talked about this a lot. Bullpen, great camaraderie, great chemistry with this organization. And here's Tonkin talking about his early impressions of this group.
I mean, they're not just really good players; they're awesome guys. I mean, it's this every single one of them just great guys. People ask me like, how's this guy? How's this guy? It's just, I mean, they're just great people. I mean, it's fun to be here.
Good players, better people, Wiley. And I think that, you can look around at organizations that have great talent, but maybe they don't fit in off the field. They don't fit in the clubhouse. That's a huge part. When you spend 7.5 months together, you have to have a group that likes to be around each other. The chemistry is huge. And what we've seen over the years, Alex does such a great job of putting players that are not only good characters on the field, but off the field as well.
I think you look at some of the veterans, too. I mean, I think A.J. Minter's probably got a big role in that. This is a guy who's been around the block in this organization. He has seen this bullpen at its peak in 2021 with the night shift. And on top of that, I also feel like as Matt Chernoff comes in and gives us a little friendly welcome. Good to see you, Matt.
Hi, Wiley.
But I think the other piece of it, too, it kind of reminds me, and again, I know I'm going to break out another football analogy here, but it's kind of like an offensive line kind of mindset, too. Yeah. Like we said, it's thankless. You're relying on everyone else in your unit to be successful, for the group to be successful as a whole. And I do think chemistry is important in the bullpen, because when things go wrong in the bullpen, you're going to catch a lot of heat. When things go right, you're not going to get a lot of attention. So you got to have a little bit of trust within each other to say, okay, he didn't have it tonight. I'm going to pick him up, in this 8th inning, or maybe it's the next night where he's down. All right, I'm the one who's going to step up and get us back on the right track.
Yeah, it's what we've seen from this group, and they did it again last night in a 7-6 win. Braves go for the sweep, and when we return, we'll talk about the pitching matchup for tonight. We'll check in with Matt Chernoff, as Chuck and Chernoff are coming up next right here on The Fan.
This is the Braves Clubhouse Report, exclusively on 680 The Fan.
Meet Harper, teammate at Truist. Hello. She was born to care and always had your back. Like the time her friend's bumper car took a gnarly hit.
Oh no!
His retainer went flying, but Harper caught it before it got crushed. Today, Harper's a teammate at Truist, the bank with Truist One checking. With no overdraft fees, a $100 negative balance buffer, and automatic upgrades, Truist One Checking has your back too. When you start with Care, you get a different kind of bank. $100 negative balance buffer. Eligibility requirements apply. Truist Bank, member FDIC.
The 2 p.m. hour is presented by Roof It Forward. When your roof needs to be repaired or replaced, call the roofing company that supports Camp Sunshine. Together, we can roof it forward.
A-R-A-C, Roof It Forward, help some kids in need.
You're listening to the Braves Clubhouse Report, presented by Arrow Exterminators, exclusively on Atlanta's sports station, the home of the Braves, The Fan.
Wrapping things up on another edition of the Braves Clubhouse here, Clubhouse Report here on The Fan. Braves and Reds coming up tonight. Wiley, it will be Spencer Strider on the mound here tonight, and a guy who has very quickly become must-see TV. You don't want to be in the concession line. You don't want to be using the restroom when Spencer's on the mound. Excited to see what he can do, and let's be honest, on paper, I know they don't play these games on paper. This certainly feels like a mismatch in Spencer's favor tonight.
No, it definitely does, and we all know the Reds are in a spot where they're looking towards the future. They've had their fair share of rough, lean years. You were talking about the Braves in 2015 and 2016. The Reds and the Tigers are two teams that come to mind where the rebuild really didn't quite take the way it has here in Atlanta. So they're trying to start from scratch yet again, it feels like. And look, they got some nice pieces. I think Graham Ashcraft could wind up being a heck of a pitcher for them. But as far as this Reds lineup taking on a guy like Spencer Strider, that would be a mismatch on paper. But as you pointed out, these games are not played on paper, and I'm looking at the Reds right now from an offensive standpoint. The one thing they've done decently well this year is they've earned the free pass. They're walking about 10% of their at-bats, which is among the top 10 teams in Major League Baseball, and that kind of has been the one knock on Spencer Strider through these first couple of starts, is he has been walking a few guys. 13% walk rate, that's a good bit higher than what it was last year. What I found interesting was he's actually throwing more first-pitch strikes these first couple of starts than he did in his season last year. So it hasn't been so much as he's not getting ahead on guys as much as he's just not able to put them away, I suppose. Which, with his stuff, I don't think that's a trend that's going to continue.
Yeah.
Yes.